So based on the title, you're probably thinking that this video is going to be either clickbait or newbie bait, because if you've been in here for a year or so, you probably already know by now that there are no such things as exercises you should or shouldn't do whilst cutting or bulking. However, you're actually wrong. Well, no, you're right that there aren't specific exercises for cutting and bulking, but you're wrong that this video isn't clickbait. There are exercises that you should probably avoid when you are dieting down. There are exercises that you really probably should avoid if you are absolutely dick skin shredded stage lean. But those same exercises could be absolutely amazing exercises when you're at maintenance or in a calorie surplus. So today I'm going to explain to you the worst exercises for cutting, what you should be avoiding if you want to make your diet as effective as possible. And I will be explaining exactly why, because I don't want you to just take my word for it. I want you to understand. Teach a man to fish and all that shit. Once you understand what makes an exercise bad for cutting, you'll understand what makes an exercise good for cutting. You can then extrapolate that into other areas and aspects of your programming, and you just become all around better at the science of programming. So this is definitely an important concept to understand. Before naming specific exercises and giving specific examples, I'll be explaining to you the general things that make a general exercise bad for cutting, so you can kind of apply it to what you're already doing. So subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and make sure to give the video a thumbs up. The top link in the description will take you to Progressive Physique Coaching, my online coaching company, or you can email me personally on ashmaypt@gmail.com if you'd like a little bit more information. So there are various factors that contribute to an exercise being bad for being in a calorie deficit, and usually the worst offenders are going to tick multiple of these boxes. If you are familiar with a term called the stimulus to fatigue ratio, then some of this will already be very familiar to you. However, that term has been absolutely destroyed and bastardized by gurus in the industry, so it's probably worth listening through anyway. So the first thing that makes an exercise usually bad for cutting is a high recovery demand. So think along the lines of these movements that just zap the energy out of you. They make your joints feel stiff, maybe achy, and they just give you a ton of muscle soreness. Ones that you would never want to do 2 or 3 times in the same week. These are bad for cutting generally. Think about it. Your body is being chronically underfed, and it's likely below its preferred level of body fat storage. You don't have a lot of available resources for recovery. So to then do an exercise that requires a lot of resources for recovery won't make sense in a lot of situations, especially when you consider the fact that your volume requirements are going to be higher to maintain muscle when you're in a calorie deficit. By doing exercises with a high recovery demand and then having to do more of them, it's just not going to gel well for your program. If you're eating at maintenance calories, then sure, you can do 2 or 3 sets for a muscle group and maintain it easily. But when you're dieting and in a catabolic state, most of the time, you're going to have to do a lot more to hold on to that muscle. So you need to be choosing exercises which allow you to do a lot more without injury risk, basically. The caveat and the risk here is that if an exercise is massively fatiguing per set, but it also gives a crazy high stimulus, then you might need to do 1 set of it. So that makes it better in this situation. So there's always going to be exercises that are going to be outliers, but generally speaking, high recovery demand exercises aren't great for a diet. For example, in your diet phase, you could do 2 sets of stiff leg deadlifts and your hamstrings could be absolutely fried, but you'd have to do 6 sets of 45-degree back extensions to get the same stimulus. The point becomes kind of mute. The next point is going to be mental fatigue, and this is an aspect of SFR which isn't discussed as often, but I still think it is majorly important. We all have those exercises which aren't necessarily super fatiguing on the actual body, right? But our brain just gets exhausted from doing them. Whether it's the fact they just take a lot of focus, or they are just brutal to be in the middle of the set, or whatever it might be. Some exercises on paper shouldn't be fatiguing or massively fatiguing. In practice, they just destroy you. For me, weirdly enough, it's dumbbell lateral raises. I don't know what it is. Cable lateral raises, machine lateral raises, anything like that, absolutely fine. Give me a pair of dumbbells, ask me to do lateral raises, and the amount of mental fatigue they cause me is just ridiculous. And this is bad when you're dieting because you are starting in a more fatigued state already. You probably already don't want to train, and you're probably already more likely to sandbagging and doing junk volume. So if you then just have a ton of high mental fatigue exercises on top of that, your set quality is going to decrease massively, your adherence may decrease, and you're basically just going to be hating the whole process. So not good. And the last point I want to touch on before giving specific examples is just injurious movements in general. Some exercises are inherently more injurious and prone to causing injury than others. It's usually because they put joints, ligaments and muscles under a loaded stretch. Think barbell movements, deep lunges, fixed machines, that kind of stuff is always more likely to cause injury because of the stress it puts on your connective tissues. And that's regardless of your nutritional situation. But when you're in a deficit, all of those risks become ramped up. It isn't just that your muscles won't be able to recover in as good a time, but all of those other things that get micro injuries throughout the course of your training, they also won't be recovering as well. So it's probably not a good time to be pounding your shoulders with an incline barbell press 3 times a week when you're deep into a diet. Add to that the fact that you are leaner, so you have less physical padding around your joints. Snap City, my friend. And I don't think I really need to say why injury is bad. But just in case, you can't train hard when you're injured, so that will mean muscle loss. You can't diet hard when you're injured, that will mean no progress. You should be eating at maintenance when you're injured to promote muscle maintenance and recovery, but that means that you aren't progressing on the diet that you should be doing. It's just all round bad news, basically. Okay, so now it's time to actually list some examples of exercises that I think you should probably be avoiding when you're on a diet and give you some alternatives to look at doing instead. I do want to preface this portion by saying that this is just personal anecdote based on what I've experienced myself and what I've done with clients. If I say not to do an exercise, but that exercise has an incredible SFR for you, then it's hard to say that you probably shouldn't be doing that. So don't listen to me in that situation. And alternatively, if one of the examples I give as a better alternative sucks for you, then don't do it. With that said, number 1, conventional deadlifts. These are usually not a good choice for cutting. They cause a ton of fatigue without causing a large amount of stimulus to a particular area on the body. They are just systemically taxing. They are definitely on the more injurious side of the spectrum, and they tend to be extremely mentally draining, which is going to lead to the rest of your session becoming very junky and lower quality compared to what it otherwise would have been. 3 sets of heavy deadlifts in a diet phase, and the rest of your workout will just go to shit. Instead of deadlifts, you can consider something like 45-degree back extensions, weighted if you can to keep them in a good rep range, or you can look at conventional deadlift variations such as a stiff leg deadlift. That is also a good option. Another one is rack pulls. These are terrible in every single way, and swap them with basically anything. I'd rather you did fucking lying Smith machine leg press than this crap. Number 3 is a group of exercises to avoid, and that is power-based movements such as cleans, hang clean and presses, push presses, anything that is power based. The benefit of doing these in a diet phase will literally be lost anyway because you won't have the energy to be explosive, and the amount of fatigue that these exercises cause isn't going to coincide with stimulus because the rep ranges you do them in is too low to give you adequate stimulation to the muscle. You're just getting wasteful fatigue that isn't going to help you maintain muscle mass. It doesn't make sense. Instead, you should consider swapping these movements out for movements which lend themselves to the hypertrophy strength rep range of around 5 to 8 reps, such as a heavy barbell bench press. You'll still be getting that heavy loading on the muscle, but you'll be getting enough volume, you'll be in a safer rep range, and so on. Number 4 is walking lunges and Bulgarian split squats. Now, these are absolutely incredible movements for building mass in your legs when you are in a gaining phase. But in my personal experience, they are terrible for dieting. They have a very, very high recovery demand on the body. I personally got hamstring tendinopathy from doing deep Bulgarian split squats, just because of the pure amount of stress they put on that tendon. They have a very high physical fatigue, which makes them difficult for getting enough volume in to maintain the muscle mass. They also have a ridiculously high mental fatigue. At the best of times, it is daunting knowing that you've got deficit Bulgarian split squats. When you're stage lean, you would rather do anything but. Really great alternatives for these would be deep, full range of motion leg presses, hack squats, high bar squats, anything that gets you a nice full range of motion using both legs at the same time, because using one leg at a time is part of what makes these so goddamn fatiguing. Number 5 is barbell, Skullcrushers and preacher curls. I absolutely love both of these movements, and I think they have contributed massively to the size of my arms. But unfortunately for a lot of people, when you're dieting down, they can just be way too rough on your elbows. Because of the sheer stimulus magnitude of these two exercises, the issue might just be cancelled out for you, but it also might not, so it's something to consider. Swapping these out with dumbbell or cable variations whilst you're in a diet could be a really good idea just to maintain the longevity of your elbow joints. Number 6, a bit of a different one, but bodyweight movements in general. Because bodyweight movements are usually nearly always closed chain movements, think pull-ups and push-ups, they can be rough on your joints. But what actually makes me think they aren't so great for dieting is that they become really difficult to track. When you're in a deficit, it's important to try your best to maintain your strength levels, maintain your performance in your training. If you are getting progressively leaner and lighter, but doing the same weight and reps on the next size you were doing 4 weeks ago, then you're probably doing something right. But with a bodyweight movement, the load you are using is going to be progressively going down as well. So have you maintained performance? Have you actually gotten stronger? Have you gotten weaker? You don't actually know because the load is changing. This is absolutely me being pedantic, obsessive and splitting hairs, I care about it, so you might too. And number 7 is an honourable mention to all of those exercises which are cardio movements masked as lifting movements. We all know somebody who goes on a cut and suddenly they've gone from doing bench press, dips and pull-ups to doing bloody kettlebell swings, ball slams and farmer's carries. No. Stop it. When you enter a cutting phase, you should not be using the exercise selection to burn calories. Do not add in kettlebell swings and all that shit thinking it's going to burn more calories for you. It's not. It's just going to stop you from doing the exercises you actually should be doing to maintain muscle mass. Use your training to maintain muscle. Use your cardio, step count and diet to lose fat. So those are 7 examples of the 7 worst types of exercises to be doing when you're in a dieting phase, along with a hopefully helpful explanation of why. As I said before, all of this is going to be highly individual and the chances are that some of the things I've mentioned will and won't apply to you. So take it with a pinch of salt, apply it to your own training and just try to understand the principles and the thought process beneath all of this. If you have any questions about programming and training for a dieting phase, then shoot me an email personally, ashmaypt@gmail.com. You can also go to Progressive Physique Coaching, the top link in the description, for more information on my online coaching services. Thank you as always for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you have any questions, drop in the comment section below. Give the video a thumbs up. Until next one, see you later guys.